There is a mass extinction event that happened 65 million years before the start of Adventure Time, and it happened because a dinosaur loved his master too much. Season 6, Episode 24. A comet is hurtling toward the Earth. A comet the show later implies carried the essence of the Lick, a being older than existence itself. An ice elemental named Urgence Evergreen builds a crown, a wish-granting device designed to stop the comet. The plan is simple: put on the crown, wish the comet away, save the world. But Evergreen never gets to wear it. In the chaos, his apprentice, a small dinosaur named Gunter, puts on the crown instead, and Gunter does not wish for the comet to stop. Gunter wishes to be like Evergreen. The comet hits, everything dies, and the crown, now imprinted with the mind of a child who wanted nothing more than to be his neglectful father, survives. It survives for 65 million years. It survives long enough to find a man named Simon Petrikov in a dockside shop in Scandinavia. And when Simon puts on that crown, it does not grant his wish. It grants Gunter's. It turns him into a version of Evergreen, a cold, lonely, ice-obsessed figure, calling everyone around him Gunter. The crown was never broken. It was working exactly as intended. It was fulfilling the wish of a dinosaur who has been dead for 65 million years. And that is not the strangest paradox in this show. That is just where this one begins. You are watching a show that is, on its surface, about a boy and his dog fighting monsters in a candy kingdom. But underneath the bright colors and the silly voices, Adventure Time built one of the most quietly complex temporal mythologies in the history of Western animation. It did it slowly. A detail here, a throwaway line there, a two-part season premiere that casually tears a hole in the fabric of reality and then moves on to an episode about making sandwiches. The paradoxes in this show are not decorative. They are not Easter eggs for fans who pay attention. They are load-bearing walls. Remove any one of them, and the mythology collapses. Tonight, you are going to hear about every single one of them. There are 10, each one stranger than the one before it. And by the time you reach the last one, the show you thought you understood will look like something else entirely. If you enjoy long-form essays like this one, subscribing helps the channel keep making them. It is free, and it takes a few seconds. Now, back to it. The first of these paradoxes is also the biggest, and it begins with a wish. In the Season 4 finale, an episode called The Lich, Finn and Jake follow the Lich through a portal into the Time Room, the domain of a wish-granting entity named Prismo. The Time Room exists outside of time. It exists outside of every dimension. It sits at the center of the multiverse, and it produces the time waves that all other dimensions experience as the passage of moments. Prismo is not a god in any traditional sense. He is a shadow on a wall, a two-dimensional projection cast by the dream of a sleeping old man. When the old man is asleep, Prismo exists. When the old man wakes up, Prismo vanishes. But in the Time Room, Prismo can grant one wish to anyone who enters. The Lich enters first. His wish is the extinction of all life. And it works. Every living thing in every dimension is erased, except for Finn and Jake, who are still inside the Time Room when the wish takes effect. Finn, desperate and terrified, makes his own wish. He wishes that the Lich had never existed. And this creates the Farm World. The Farm World is a version of reality where the Mushroom War never escalated. The bomb was never detonated. The Lich was never awakened. Finn grows up on a farm with a family, a normal boy in a world that never ended. It sounds like a happy ending. It is not. Because Jake is still in the Time Room. Jake was not transported to the Farm World. He stayed behind in a place that exists outside of all realities. And he remembers the original Finn. He remembers the original timeline. He remembers everything that the wish was supposed to erase. And this is the fracture point. A memory of something that should no longer exist held in a place where wishes cannot reach, creates a contradiction that the multiverse cannot resolve. Jake makes his own wish. He wishes that the leech's original wish had been for Finn and Jake to return home. And it works, in a way. Finn and Jake are returned to Ooo. The Prime Timeline is restored. But the farm world does not disappear. It cannot disappear, because its existence is now necessary for the chain of wishes to make sense. If the farm world never existed, then Finn never made his wish, which means Jake never made his wish, which means they never returned to Ooo. The farm world has to exist in order for it to have been undone. It is a causal loop with no clean exit. Two realities, both equally real, both dependent on the other for their continued existence. The show does not explain this. The show does not need to. It simply lets both realities continue, and the consequences of that decision ripple forward for seasons. In the farm world, things go wrong almost immediately. Farm world Finn, a version of Finn who grew up without the apocalypse, finds the ice crown. He puts it on. The crown, still imprinted with Gunter's 65 million year old wish, begins to transform him. Meanwhile, the dormant mushroom bomb, the one that was never supposed to detonate in this timeline, goes off. The blast creates mutagenic waste. Farm world Jake, the dog, is exposed to it, and the Lich, the entity that was supposed to have never existed in this timeline, possesses farm world Jake. The Lich returns, not because the wish failed, but because the paradox created a back door. A reality that was supposed to be Lich-free now contains a Lich, born from the very conditions the wish was supposed to prevent. And this Lich does not stay in the farm world. By season 7, in an episode called Crossover, Farm World Lich finds a way to reach toward the Prime Timeline. Finn and Jake, the original Finn and Jake, have to cross into the farm world to stop their own accidental creation. Think about what that means. They are fighting a monster that exists because they tried to make a wish. The wish worked. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. And the consequence of it working is that the thing they wished away came back in a different form, in a different timeline, wearing the face of their own best friend. The show frames this not as a failure of the wish, but as an inevitability of wishing. The time room can alter reality, but it cannot erase consequence. Every wish is a transaction, and the currency is paradox. There is one more layer to this. In 2023, the spin-off series Fiona and Cake returned to the farm world and addressed the paradox directly. Showrunner Adam Muto called it the show's wildest paradox and acknowledged that the original series had left it deliberately unresolved. The farm world was never supposed to be a one-off alternate universe. It was supposed to be a scar, a permanent reminder that the multiverse remembers everything, even the things you wished it would forget. What most people miss about the farm world is that it is not a parallel universe in the way most fiction uses that term. It is not a universe that always existed alongside the Prime Timeline. It was created by a wish in real time with witnesses. Jake watched it happen. He watched Finn vanish from the time room and reappear as a farm boy in a world without magic, and he remembers both versions of Finn simultaneously. The Jake who stood in the time room holds two contradictory truths in his head at the same time. Finn is a hero in a post-apocalyptic candy kingdom, and Finn is a farm boy who has never seen a talking dog. Both are true. Both are happening. And Jake's memory of the original is the only thing keeping the paradox alive. Prismo himself acknowledges this. He does not seem troubled by it. He treats the paradox the way a physicist might treat a quantum superposition. Both states exist until observation collapses them, and in the time room, nothing is ever observed in the collapsing sense. Everything is held in suspension. Every possibility remains open. The time room does not experience time the way other dimensions do. It produces time. It radiates it outward, like heat from a star. And inside the time room, contradiction is not a problem. It is the natural state of things. But outside the time room, contradiction is a problem. The farm world cannot simply exist alongside the prime timeline without consequences. The two realities share a common ancestor. They diverge at a single point, the Lich's existence. In one reality, the Lich exists, the Mushroom War happens, the world ends. Finn becomes a hero. In the other, the Lich does not exist, the war does not escalate, the world continues. Finn becomes a farmer. These two realities are not independent. They are entangled. And the entanglement means that anything that happens in one can, under the right conditions, bleed into the other. This is exactly what happens in Crossover. The farm world Lich, the one that was born from the paradox, the one that should not exist in a Lich-free timeline, reaches toward the prime universe. He does this because the Lich is not just a creature. The Lich is a concept. He is the embodiment of extinction, of entropy, of the desire for all things to end. And concepts do not respect dimensional boundaries. The farm world Lich shares a consciousness with the original Lich, or at least shares his purpose. He is drawn toward the prime timeline the way water is drawn downhill, not by choice, but by gravity. The Wish created a world without the Lich, and the Lich's nature found a way back in anyway, because destruction is not something you can wish away. You can change its form, you can change its address, but you cannot change what it wants. The farm world is the show's longest meditation on the nature of consequence. It spans 4 seasons of the original series and carries over into the spin-off. It is the thread that connects the Wish episodes to the crossover episode to the finale to Fiona and Cake. And the lesson it teaches is simple and terrible. You cannot unmake something by wishing it away. You can only move it somewhere else. And somewhere else is still somewhere. There is a moment in the crossover episode that crystallizes this. Prismo, who has been treating the farm world paradox as an interesting intellectual curiosity, is forced to intervene directly. He cannot fix the paradox. He cannot merge the timelines or delete one of them. But he can edit. He can adjust. He takes the crown, the one that farm world Finn took from Simon Skeleton, and places it back. He patches the timeline the way you patch a leaking pipe, not by replacing the pipe, but by wrapping tape around the crack and hoping it holds. It is not a solution. It is a gesture. And the show knows it is a gesture. The episode ends not with triumph, but with the uneasy feeling that the tape will not hold forever, that the crack is still there, that the farm world is still generating consequences that will eventually demand attention again. And they do. Years later, in Fiona and Cake, the farm world returns. The paradox is still alive. Farm world Finn is still trapped. The consequences are still compounding. And the show finally calls it what it was always meant to be. The wildest paradox in the series. Not because of its mechanics, though the mechanics are genuinely complex, but because of what it represents. The farm world is the show's argument that good intentions create bad outcomes, that wishes are transactions, and that the price of changing reality is living with 2 realities instead of 1. There is a detail about the time room that the show introduces quietly and never fully explains, and it changes the way every paradox in this video functions. The time room does not just grant wishes, it produces time. It is the source of temporal experience for every dimension in the multiverse. Other dimensions experience the passage of moments, because the time room radiates time waves outward, the way a lighthouse radiates light. The dimensions do not generate their own time. They receive it. They are downstream of the time room, dependent on it, shaped by its output. This means that every paradox in Adventure Time is, in a structural sense, the time room's fault. The time room creates the conditions for paradox by producing time and granting wishes simultaneously. It generates the river and then lets people redirect it. Every wish is a dam in the river of time, and every dam creates turbulence downstream. The farm world is turbulence. The Finsword is turbulence. Betty merging with Golb is turbulence. They are all consequences of wishes made in a room that sits at the center of everything, radiating the medium through which consequences travel. Prismo knows this. He has to know this. He has been granting wishes for what appears to be an extraordinarily long time, and he has seen the paradoxes compound. He has watched timelines fork, and entities multiply, and contradictions stack on top of each other like geological layers. And he continues granting wishes. He does not stop. He does not refuse. He does not warn people that their wishes will create paradoxes that will generate suffering that will last for millennia. Why? The show offers two possible explanations, neither explicit. The first is that Prismo is bound by his function. He is a wish-granting entity the way the sun is a light-emitting star. He does not choose to grant wishes any more than the sun chooses to shine. It is what he is. It is what the time room does. The paradoxes are side effects of a cosmic function, like radiation from a nuclear reactor. Unavoidable. Built into the design. The second explanation is darker. Prismo likes it. He is, by the show's depiction, a laid-back, friendly, somewhat lonely entity who enjoys having visitors. He enjoys conversation. He enjoys the company of people who come to make wishes. And if he stopped granting wishes, or if he warned people effectively enough that they chose not to wish, he would be alone in the time room forever. A shadow on a wall in an empty room at the center of everything. The paradoxes are the price of his company. The suffering is the cost of his social life. The show never commits to either explanation. It lets Prismo remain sympathetic, even likable, even as the consequences of his function pile up across seasons. He is not a villain. He is not negligent. He is a cosmic entity doing his job, and his job happens to create paradoxes. And the paradoxes happen to create suffering. And the suffering happens to be the engine that drives the entire narrative of Adventure Time. Remove the paradoxes, and you remove the story. Remove the story, and you remove the reason to watch. We are, in a sense, complicit. We want the paradoxes. We want the suffering. We want to see what happens when a wish goes wrong. Because watching things go wrong in a fictional universe is one of the ways we process the things that go wrong in ours. The Farm World paradox also raises a question about Prismo that the show deliberately leaves unanswered. Does Prismo know, when he grants a wish, what the paradox will look like? Does he see the consequences branching outward from the moment of granting? Does he know that Finn's wish will create a second timeline? That the second timeline will breed its own lich? That the lich will eventually reach back toward the Prime Universe? The evidence suggests that he does. Prismo is not surprised by any of the consequences. When the farm world continues to exist after Jake's counter-wish, Prismo does not panic. He does not seem concerned. He treats the paradox as an expected outcome, a known cost, a line item in the ledger of wish granting. He has done this before. He has seen wishes fork timelines before. He has watched the downstream effects of his function play out across dimensions and eras, and he has made peace with it. But making peace with it and being responsible for it are different things, and the show is careful never to hold Prismo accountable. No character ever confronts Prismo and says, "You did this. You granted the wishes that created the paradoxes that generated the suffering." Nobody asks him whether he could have refused. Nobody asks him whether there was a way to grant the wish without forking the timeline. Nobody asks him whether the pickle ritual and the time loop and the Fin Sword were really the only way to resurrect himself, or whether he chose the way that was most interesting, the way that generated the most narrative, the way that created the most collateral consciousness. The show protects Prismo because the show needs Prismo. Without Prismo, there is no mechanism for the paradoxes. Without the paradoxes, there is no mythology. Without the mythology, there is no show. Prismo is the engine of the narrative, and you do not blame the engine for the road. But there is a version of Adventure Time in which Prismo is the true antagonist. Not in the dramatic sense, not as a villain, but in the structural sense. He is the character whose actions generate the most suffering. He is the character whose function creates the most collateral damage. And he is also the character who is most loved, most trusted, most welcomed when he appears on screen. The paradox of Prismo is that the character who causes the most harm is the character you are most happy to see. Consider the math. Prismo's resurrection plan, executed in Is That You?, requires the creation and destruction of a conscious duplicate of Fin. That duplicate becomes the Fin Sword. The Fin Sword becomes Fern. Fern suffers through 2 seasons of identity crisis, turns villainous, and dies in Fin's arms. That is one person's entire existence, from creation to death, generated as a side effect of Prismo's self-preservation. Prismo wanted to come back from the dead. The cost was a person who never asked to exist, suffered for the entirety of his existence, and died without resolution. And Prismo hands Fin the sword afterward like a party favor, a gift, a souvenir from the time loop that ate a person alive. Is Prismo responsible for Fern? The show says no. The show treats Fern's suffering as the consequence of the grass sword's curse, of Fin's choices, of the general unfairness of existing in a universe where consciousness can be generated by accident. But the counterfactual is clear. Without Prismo's plan, no time loop. Without the time loop, no duplicate Fin. Without the duplicate, no Fin Sword. Without the Fin Sword, no Fern. The causal chain is unbroken, and at the beginning of the chain, there is Prismo, planning his resurrection, calculating the steps, knowing, or at least suspecting, that one of the steps would create a person, and proceeding anyway. This is the deepest layer of the Farm World paradox, and it is the layer the show refuses to excavate. The paradoxes are not natural phenomena. They are artifacts of a system designed to grant wishes, operated by an entity who has been granting wishes for longer than anyone can remember. The suffering is not random. It is generated. It is produced by a mechanism that sits at the center of the multiverse, radiating time and possibility and consequence outward in all directions. And the entity at the center of that mechanism is not malicious, is not careless, is not even particularly concerned. He is just doing his job. And his job happens to break the world over and over again in ways that look like stories. The second paradox is the one that created the first, though you would not know it until 65 million years after the fact. This is the crown. The paradox of Evergreen's crown is not that it malfunctions. The paradox is that it works perfectly, and has been working perfectly for the entire run of the show, and nobody within the show ever realizes it. Here is what Evergreen intended. He built a crown capable of granting the deepest wish of whoever wears it first. The key word is first. The crown bonds permanently to the mind of its initial wearer. Every subsequent person who puts it on does not get their own wish. They get Gunter's. They become a version of Evergreen, because that is what Gunter wanted more than anything in the world. To be like his master, to have his power, to be seen by him. Simon Petrikov buys the crown at an estate sale in Scandinavia. The year, as best as the show establishes it, is sometime in the early 1980s. He puts it on as a joke, and he begins to change. Not because the crown is evil, not because it is cursed in any supernatural sense, but because it is still executing Gunter's wish. Simon begins to lose his memory. He begins to obsess over ice and cold. He begins to call the people around him Gunter. He pushes away Betty, the woman he loves. He forgets who he is. Over the course of decades, Simon Petrikov becomes the Ice King, a lonely, confused, ice-obsessed wizard who kidnaps princesses and talks to penguins. He is, in every meaningful sense, a version of Evergreen. Cold, powerful, alone, surrounded by creatures he calls Gunter, just as Evergreen called his apprentice. The paradox here is temporal, but also emotional. Gunter's wish was not malicious. It was the wish of a child who wanted his father's approval. And that wish, echoing across 65 million years, destroyed Simon Petrikov's life. It separated him from Betty. It erased his identity. It turned him into a parody of a man he never met, shaped by the loneliness of a dinosaur he never knew existed. The crown does not care about Simon. The crown does not know Simon exists. The crown is still dreaming Gunter's dream, and everyone who wears it gets pulled into that dream whether they want to or not. But here is where the paradox deepens. If Gunter had successfully wished the comet away, the Mushroom War might never have happened. The Lich might never have been born. Ooh might never have existed. Finn might never have existed. And Simon would never have found the crown, because the crown would have been used and discarded 65 million years ago. The entire post-apocalyptic world of Adventure Time exists because a child's wish went wrong. And the crown that caused the Ice King's suffering is the same crown that, by failing to stop the comet, made the world that the Ice King lives in possible. Simon's torment is the price of the world he inhabits. His loss is the foundation of everything. The show makes this connection explicit in Season 6, Episode 24, the episode titled Evergreen. The episode is structured as a flashback to the age of dinosaurs, narrated through the perspective of the Elementals, the four primal forces of the Adventure Time universe. It aired on January 22nd, 2015, and it changes everything the audience thought they knew about the Ice King's crown. Before Evergreen, viewers assumed the crown was a magical artifact with vaguely evil properties. After Evergreen, they understood that the crown was a grief machine, running a 65 million year old program written by a child who just wanted to be loved. And the cruelest part of the paradox is this: Gunter's wish was not wrong. It was the most honest wish in the entire show. A child who wanted to be like his father. That is not a corrupted desire. That is not a selfish wish. It is the most natural thing in the world, and it destroyed everything it touched for millions of years, not because the wish was bad, but because the crown could not distinguish between a wish and an obsession. Gunter did not want to be like Evergreen. Gunter needed to be like Evergreen, and the crown heard that need and made it eternal. Consider what the crown's journey looks like from the outside. If you could watch it move through time like a tracking shot in a film, you would see it sitting on the head of a small dinosaur as a comet strikes the Earth. You would see 65 million years of darkness, of burial, of geological churn. You would see it surface, somehow intact, carried by currents of history you cannot trace. You would see it pass through hands you will never know, through civilizations that rose and fell while the crown sat in a drawer, or a vault, or a cave. And then you would see it arrive in Scandinavia, in a shop, on a shelf, waiting for Simon Petrikov to walk in and pick it up like a curiosity. The crown did not choose Simon. Simon was not special. He was simply the next person to wear it after 65 million years of waiting. The crown does not have preferences. It has a program. And the program says, make the wearer into Evergreen. Give them ice powers. Give them loneliness give them the obsessive, grasping need that Gunter felt for his master's approval, translated into an obsessive, grasping need for companionship that manifests as kidnapping princesses and building ice sculptures and crying in an empty castle. The show reveals the depth of this program gradually. In early seasons, the Ice King is comic relief. He is a nuisance. He kidnaps Princess Bubblegum. He interrupts Finn and Jake's adventures. He is annoying and sad and funny. And then, piece by piece, the show peels back the comedy and reveals the tragedy underneath. Simon and Marcy. I Remember You. Betty. Holly Jolly Secrets. Each episode adds a layer to the Crown's paradox. Each episode makes the comedy harder to laugh at. In I Remember You, which aired on October 15th, 2012, in Season 4, the Ice King visits Marceline with a box of old documents. He wants her help writing a song. He does not remember that the documents are letters he wrote to her as Simon centuries ago when he was losing his mind and she was a frightened child in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Marceline remembers. She reads the letters and cries. The Ice King does not understand why she is crying. He cannot connect the man who wrote those letters to the man he is now. The Crown has erased the connection. It has replaced Simon's love for Marceline with the Ice King's vague, unfocused loneliness. The shape of the relationship is still there, like a fossil in rock, but the living thing inside it is gone. This is the Crown's paradox operating in real time. Gunter wanted to be like Evergreen. Evergreen was powerful and cold and alone. Simon became powerful and cold and alone. And in becoming those things, he lost the people who loved him, just as Evergreen lost Gunter's devotion by withholding his affection. The Crown does not just transform its wearer, it recreates the emotional dynamics of its origin. It is not enough for Simon to have ice powers. He has to have Evergreen's loneliness too. He has to have Evergreen's isolation. He has to push people away the way Evergreen pushed Gunter away, not out of cruelty, but out of a fundamental inability to prioritize connection over power. And Gunter, the original Gunter, the dinosaur, never knew any of this would happen. He did not design the Crown's behavior. He did not choose to imprint it with his neediness. He was a child putting on a hat in a moment of crisis. And the hat heard his heart and decided to echo it forever. The Crown is not malicious. It is not sentient. It is a machine running a program written by a child's unconscious desire. And it has been running that program for longer than mammals have existed on Earth. If you want to understand why the Ice King is the way he is, you do not look at Simon. You look at Gunter, at the original Gunter, the dinosaur who just wanted his master to say well done. That is the engine. That is the source code. Every princess the Ice King kidnaps is a version of Evergreen he is trying to hold onto. Every Gunter he names is a version of himself he is trying to acknowledge. The Crown turned Simon into a machine for reenacting a relationship that ended 65 million years ago between two beings he has never met, in a world that no longer exists, over an emotion that was never resolved. And the cruelest layer of this paradox, the one the show waits until the finale to reveal, is that the program can be overwritten. Inside Golb, the Crown reverts to its essential form. The imprint is erased. Gunter's wish, the 65 million year old program, is wiped clean. And for one moment, one single moment in the entire series, the Crown is what Evergreen intended it to be, a neutral wish-granting device, waiting for a new first wish. That moment is Betty's moment. And what she does with it creates paradox number 7. But the point here, the point that makes the Crown's paradox so devastating, is that the program was always temporary. It was always overwritable. Simon suffered for centuries under a program that could have been erased at any time, if only someone had known how. The cure existed. It was just locked behind the most dangerous entity in the multiverse. And if you pull back even further, if you look at the Crown's paradox from the widest possible angle, you see something that the show only hints at, but never states directly. The Crown is not the only artifact in the show that runs on ancient programming. The elementals, the four primal forces that Evergreen belonged to, recur throughout the series: fire, ice, candy, slime. They reincarnate, just like Finn's soul, into new bodies in new eras. Princess Bubblegum is the current candy elemental. Flame Princess is the current fire elemental. Slime Princess is the current slime elemental. And the Ice King, or rather the Crown, carries the legacy of the ice elemental. But the Crown is different from the other elemental legacies, because the Crown is artificial. The other elementals pass their power through natural reincarnation. The ice elemental's power was captured in a device, locked in a machine, and the machine's programming has been overriding the natural process ever since. Every ice elemental since Evergreen has been filtered through Gunter's wish. Every ice elemental has been a version of Evergreen, because the Crown demands it. The natural cycle was interrupted by a piece of technology, and the technology has been running for so long that nobody remembers it was an interruption. This is a paradox about systems, about the way temporary solutions become permanent infrastructure, about the way a quick fix applied in a moment of crisis 65 million years ago becomes the foundation of an entire elemental lineage. The Crown was supposed to be used once, to stop one comet, and then presumably discarded. Instead, it became the defining artifact of the ice elemental tradition, shaping every bearer into a copy of a copy of a copy of a dinosaur's fantasy of his father. The temporary became eternal, the emergency became the norm, and nobody in the show, not Simon, not Marceline, not Bubblegum, not even Prismo, questions whether the ice elemental should be free of the Crown entirely. They all assume the Crown is part of the package. They all assume the programming is the identity. Until the finale, until Golb strips the Crown back to its essential form and reveals that the programming was always an overlay, always a patch, always something that could be removed. The ice elemental does not need the Crown. The Crown was never supposed to last this long. The paradox collapses in a single moment of cosmic intervention, and what is left is just a hat. A hat and a man named Simon, standing in the ruins of a mythology that was built on a misunderstanding. The third paradox is smaller in scale, but no less disorienting. It takes place in a single episode, Season 6, Episode 19, titled, Is That You? The episode aired on November 6, 2014, and it contains one of the most elegantly constructed bootstrap paradoxes in any animated series. Here's the setup. Prismo is dead. The old man whose dream-projected Prismo was woken up by the Lich in Season 5, and when the old man woke up, Prismo vanished. Finn and Jake want to bring him back. Prismo, before his death, left instructions, a plan, a set of steps that, if followed correctly, would create the conditions for his resurrection. The plan involves pickles, it involves a ritual, and it involves a time loop. Jake performs the pickle ritual and falls asleep in the time room, becoming the new dreamer whose dream projects Prismo. But for this to work, a specific sequence of events has to happen in a specific order, and some of those events have already happened, and some of them have not happened yet. Finn finds himself inside a recursive loop. He watches himself from the outside. He sees a version of himself performing actions that he has not yet decided to perform, and then he has to decide to perform them. Because if he does not, the loop breaks, and Prismo stays dead. The bootstrap paradox is this: the Finn sword. Inside the loop, there are two Finns, the original Finn and a duplicate created by the paradox. When the loop collapses, the duplicate Finn does not disappear. He does not fade away. He is compressed. His body transforms into a sword, the Finn sword. Prismo hands it to the surviving Finn and says, essentially, "Here, this is yours now. You are holding a sword made out of yourself." The Finn sword is not a metaphor. It is a literal object made from a person who was created by a time loop and then destroyed by the resolution of that loop. It contains a consciousness. There is a tiny Finn living inside the blade, aware, confused, trapped. And this tiny Finn eventually becomes Fern, one of the most important characters in the final seasons of the show. Fern is a grass clone hybrid born from the Finn sword's consciousness, merging with the cursed grass sword. He takes Finn's name. He has Finn's memories. He believes he is Finn. And he is, in a way. He is the version of Finn that the time loop created and then turned into a weapon. The paradox is that the Finn sword has to exist in order for the loop to work. But the loop has to work in order for the Finn sword to exist. There is no first cause. There is no original moment where someone decided to create the sword. It simply exists because it has to, because the loop requires it, because Prismo's plan required a sacrifice that was also a creation, that was also a trap. And here is what makes this paradox different from the Farm World paradox. The Farm World paradox is about consequences. The Finn sword paradox is about identity. Who is the real Finn? The one holding the sword, or the one inside it? The show never answers this. Fern spends his entire arc trying to answer it, and the answer he arrives at is that there is no answer. He is Finn, and he is not Finn. He is real, and he is a copy. He is a person, and he is a weapon. The paradox is not resolved. It is inhabited. What makes the Finn sword paradox genuinely unsettling is not the mechanics of the time loop. It is what happens after. The sword is sentient. There is a person inside it, and Finn carries that person on his back, uses him in battle, swings him at enemies. The Finn inside the sword is aware of this. He experiences being a weapon. He experiences being wielded by a version of himself that gets to walk around and make choices and live a life while he is trapped inside a blade. The show does not flinch from this. In Season 7, Episode 34, I Am a Sword, which aired on June 23rd, 2016, the Finn sword is lost. It falls into the hands of Bandit Princess, who uses it without any awareness that there is a consciousness inside it. The Finn inside the sword tries to communicate. He tries to reach out. And the show depicts this from his perspective, from inside the blade, looking out through the metal at a world he can see but cannot touch. He is Finn. He has Finn's memories. He has Finn's personality. And he is a tool. This would be disturbing enough on its own. But the show goes further. In Season 8, the Grass Sword, a cursed weapon that has been bonded to Finn's arm since Season 5, makes contact with the Finn sword. The two swords merge. The Grass Sword's curse combines with the Finn sword's consciousness, and the result is Fern, a grass duplicate of Finn, a person made from a paradox and a curse, wearing Finn's face, carrying Finn's memories, believing himself to be Finn. Fern's arc is one of the most psychologically complex storylines in the entire series. He starts as an ally. He is happy. He is Finn, or at least he believes he is. He moves into the treehouse. He goes on adventures. He tries to live Finn's life. And slowly, piece by piece, the realization sets in that he is not Finn. He is something else, something made from Finn, assembled from Finn's parts, but not Finn. He has the memories, but not the history. He has the face, but not the identity. He is a copy who remembers being the original, and the gap between what he remembers and what he is drives him to a breaking point. By the time Fern becomes a villain, his motivation is not power or revenge in any traditional sense. It is the desperate need to be real, to be the Finn, to not be the copy. And the only way he can imagine achieving that is by replacing the original Finn, by eliminating the version of himself that gets to be real while he does not. The bootstrap paradox that created the Finn sword has generated a person who cannot exist peacefully alongside his own origin. The loop required a sacrifice, and the sacrifice became a person, and the person became a tragedy. In the series finale, Fern dies. He disintegrates in Finn's arms, finally accepting that he is not Finn, that he never was, that the identity he clung to was a prison built by a time loop that never intended to create a person in the first place. His remains become a tree. The tree grows at the site of the treehouse. It produces a single seed that becomes Finn's new sword. The cycle completes. The paradox generates a person, the person suffers, the person dies, and the death creates a new object that carries forward a trace of everything that was lost. It is not a resolution. It is a metamorphosis. The paradox does not end. It changes shape. And you have to ask yourself, watching Fern dissolve, watching the tree grow, whether the time loop is that you created Fern intentionally. Whether Prismo knew when he designed the plan to resurrect himself that the plan required a sacrifice that would eventually become a person who would eventually suffer and die. Prismo is not careless. Prismo is not cruel. But Prismo is a cosmic entity who thinks in loops and patterns, and loops and patterns do not account for the feelings of the things caught inside them. Fern was collateral damage. He was the human cost of a wish granting entity's resurrection plan, a cost measured not in money or power, but in identity, in the specific agony of being a person who knows they are a copy and cannot stop knowing. The Finn Sword paradox is the show's most intimate exploration of what paradoxes do to the people trapped inside them. The Farm World paradox is about consequences on a cosmic scale. The Crown paradox is about consequences across millennia. The Finn Sword paradox is about consequences measured in a single consciousness, a single awareness, a single voice inside a blade saying, I am real too. I am Finn too. Why do you get to be the one who walks around? The show never answers that voice. It just lets it speak, and then lets it fall silent, and then lets a tree grow where the voice used to be. There is also something worth sitting with about the way the Finn Sword paradox connects to the show's broader treatment of consciousness. Adventure Time has always been interested in the question of what it means to be aware. BMO, the living video game console, has consciousness but was manufactured. The Fire Giants are sentient but were programmed. Lemongrab was created in a laboratory and has feelings so intense they border on agony. The show is full of beings whose consciousness was imposed rather than evolved. Beings who did not choose to be aware, but are. Beings whose existence is a side effect of someone else's creative act. The Finn inside the Finn Sword is the purest expression of this theme. He was not born. He was not built. He was not wished into existence by a cosmic entity. He was generated by a time loop as a byproduct of Prismo's resurrection plan. His consciousness is collateral. His awareness is an accident. And yet, he is aware. He experiences. He suffers. He wants things. He has preferences and fears and a sense of self that is entirely his own, even though his self is a copy of someone else's self. The show asks you to take this seriously. It does not treat the Finn inside the sword as a plot device, or a novelty. It treats him as a person. When Fern emerges from the Finn sword, he is given a full character arc, with motivations and relationships, and a psychological complexity that rivals any character in the series. He is a person made from a paradox, and the show respects his personhood even as it acknowledges his paradoxical origins. The message is clear: consciousness does not require a conventional origin. Awareness does not need permission. If you are aware, you are real, even if you are a byproduct, even if you are an accident, even if you were never supposed to exist. This connects directly to the Fiona and Cake paradox. Fiona was created by Prismo as a private experiment. Fern was created by a time loop as a byproduct. Both were unauthorized. Both were accidental in some sense. And both are real. The show treats unauthorized consciousness with the same respect it treats authorized consciousness, which is to say, with the understanding that consciousness does not come in authorized and unauthorized varieties. It just comes. And once it comes, it has rights. Once it comes, it matters. Once it comes, erasing it is violence, regardless of how it got here. The fourth paradox takes place entirely inside a pillow fort. Season 5, Episode 16. Hoo-Hoy, aired on March 4th, 2013. On the surface, it is one of the silliest episodes in the entire series. Finn builds a pillow fort. He crawls inside. He falls through a portal into a world made entirely of pillows. And then he lives an entire life there. Not a dream, not a hallucination, a life. He grows up. He meets a woman named Rosalind. He falls in love. He marries her. They have children. He watches those children grow. He grows old himself. His hair turns white. His body weakens. And then, surrounded by his family, in a world made of fabric and stuffing, Finn dies. His spirit rises from his body and drifts through a dark void. In that void, for a fraction of a second, he passes something enormous, something the show does not name until much later. It is Golb, the entity of chaos and dissolution, the thing that unmakes things. Finn's spirit passes Golb like a ship passing an iceberg, close enough to feel the cold, and then he emerges from the pillow fort in Ooo. He is 14 years old. No time has passed. Jake is still in the other room. The phone rings. It is Flame Princess, returning a call from before Finn entered the fort. Finn starts to tell Jake about his life in the pillow world, about Rosalind, about the children, about dying, and then the memory fades. It dissolves. Within seconds, he cannot remember any of it. He hangs up the phone and moves on with his day as if nothing happened. The paradox here is not temporal in the mechanical sense. It is existential. Finn lived a full life. He experienced decades of love, loss, aging, and death. And then he returned to his original body, at his original age, with no memory of any of it. The question the episode asks and refuses to answer is, did it happen? Is Rosalind real? Are the children real? Is there a pillow dimension somewhere in the Adventure Time multiverse where a woman is mourning the death of her husband? A husband who is also a 14-year-old boy in another dimension who does not remember she exists? The show borrows this structure from a Tang Dynasty story called The World Inside a Pillow, written by Shen Jiji. In the original story, a man enters a magical pillow and lives an entire life of ambition, power, and loss, only to wake up and realize the millet he was cooking when he fell asleep has not even finished. The point of the parable is that worldly pursuits are illusory. Adventure Time takes that parable and adds a dimension of cruelty that the original did not have. In the original story, the man remembers. He learns the lesson. In Adventure Time, Finn forgets. He does not get the lesson. He does not get to carry the weight of a life lived and lost. He just gets a phone call from his girlfriend and a vague feeling that something important happened. There is a reading of this episode that is beautiful, that Finn was granted a vision of what his life could be, a full life with love and family and peace, and that the universe was kind enough to let him forget it so he could keep being a kid. And there is another reading that is devastating, that Finn lived a real life in a real place and lost it all, and the loss does not even register. That somewhere in the multiverse, there are pillow children who will never see their father again, and their father does not know they exist. The Puhoi paradox becomes even more disorienting when you consider Golb. In the moment between Finn's death in the pillow world and his return to Ooo, his spirit passes through Golb's domain. This is the first time Golb appears in the series, though the audience does not know it yet. The entity is not named. It is not explained. It is just a massive, dark, inscrutable shape that Finn drifts past on his way back to being 14. The show drops this detail like a stone into a lake and lets the ripples spread across the remaining seasons without comment. But the implication is staggering. Golb is the entity of dissolution. Golb breaks things down to their essential forms, and Finn passes through Golb on his way back from a full lifetime and arrives home with no memory of it. Golb did not just transport Finn back. Golb dissolved the Pillow World lifetime. It broke down the accumulated years, the marriage, the children, the aging, the death, and reduced Finn to his essential form, a 14-year-old boy with a phone call to return. The passage through Golb is the mechanism by which the paradox resolves itself. The lifetime was real. Golb unmade it. And Finn, reduced to his essence, cannot remember what was taken from him. This retroactively changes the meaning of every Golb appearance that follows. When Golb appears in the finale, consuming everyone inside it and reducing them to their essential forms, the show is not introducing a new mechanic. It is repeating one it established 5 seasons earlier in a throwaway comedy episode about pillows. Golb has always been the entity that unmakes complexity and returns things to their simplest state. Finn's trip through the Pillow World was a test run, a preview, a quiet demonstration of what Golb does, delivered in the gentlest possible form, embedded in an episode about blanket forts and pillow people. And there is one more angle to the Puhoi paradox that the show never explicitly addresses, but that fans have debated since 2013. The Pillow World is accessed through a physical object, a pillow fort, a construction of fabric and stuffing that exists in Finn's house. If the Pillow World is real, if it is a genuine alternate dimension accessed through a portal in a pillow fort, then the portal is still there. It has always been there. Anyone could crawl into that fort and live an entire life and come back. The show never revisits this. It never closes the portal. It never warns anyone about it. The implication is that Finn's house contains, somewhere in a closet or a corner, an unguarded doorway to a dimension where you can live an entire life in a matter of seconds. And nobody knows about it except Finn, who does not remember it. The Pillow World is the show's way of asking what happens to the lives we do not remember, not just in a metaphysical sense, in a practical one. If you lived a life and forgot it, did the people in that life stop existing? Is Rosalind still there? Are the children still growing up? Is there a version of the Pillow World where an entire community mourns a man who vanished, and the man is sitting in a treehouse in a candy kingdom watching television, not even aware that he left something behind? The show does not answer these questions because the show understands that the absence of an answer is the paradox. If the Pillow World is real, then Finn abandoned a family. If it is not real, then Finn's experience of love and aging and death was a hallucination, which means the show is suggesting that lived experience can be fictional, which raises questions about the show itself and the lived experiences of every character within it. Either way, something is broken. Either a family is abandoned or experience is meaningless. The show holds both possibilities in tension and refuses to choose, which is exactly what a paradox is supposed to do. The fifth paradox is a loop that should not be escapable, and the fact that Finn escapes it is the paradox itself. Season 7, Episode 24, The Hall of Egress, aired on January 28, 2016. This is one of the most formally experimental episodes in the entire series, and it contains a paradox that operates more like a Zen koan than a plot device. Finn enters a dungeon. Inside, he finds a strange room. When he opens his eyes inside this room, he is sent back to the moment he closed them. Not just physically, temporally. His mind is reset to the moment of closing. Every time he opens his eyes, the loop restarts. He cannot leave the room with his eyes open. He cannot exist outside the room without opening his eyes. He is trapped in a recursive loop between seeing and not seeing, between knowledge and ignorance. Finn's solution is to blindfold himself. He wraps layers of cloth around his head and leaves the dungeon blind. He wanders the world, unable to see. He tries to live his life this way. He stumbles through forests. He walks into walls. He is helpless and frustrated and alone. He does this for what appears to be months, possibly years. Jake ages. The world around him changes. Time passes for everyone except Finn, who is frozen in a different way now. Not by the loop, but by the fear of the loop. He cannot open his eyes because opening his eyes means going back, means losing everything again, means starting over. And then something shifts. Finn wanders into a dungeon identical to the Hall of Egress. He enters the same room, and this time something is different. He cannot pass through with his eyes closed. The loop has changed. The rules have changed. And Finn removes his blindfolds and opens his eyes. He does not go back. He walks through the room, eyes open, and for the first time, he can see the invisible pathway that he walked through earlier without knowing it was there. The loop is broken, not by force, not by cleverness, by change. Finn is no longer the same person who entered the hall. He has been altered by the experience of wandering blind, by the time that passed, by the losses he accumulated. The loop cannot reset a person who is no longer the person the loop was designed to trap. The paradox is this: the only way to escape the loop is to stop wanting to escape the loop. But you cannot stop wanting to escape the loop while you are inside it. You have to leave first, but you cannot leave without escaping it. The resolution is that Finn does not solve the paradox. He outgrows it. He becomes a different question. And the loop, designed for the old question, has no answer for the new one. This is the episode that closest resembles a philosophical thought experiment. It is the show's version of the Liar's Paradox, or Zeno's Arrow, or the problem of the Ship of Theseus. It asks whether a person who has changed completely is still the same person, and it answers by showing you what happens when the universe itself cannot decide. What the Hall of Egress really examines is the relationship between perception and reality, and whether reality can exist without someone to perceive it. Every time Finn opens his eyes inside the hall, the world resets. His perception collapses the timeline. His seeing is an act of destruction, erasing the progress he has made and returning him to a state of unknowing. The show is literalizing a philosophical problem that has been debated since Bishop Berkeley. If a tree falls in a forest and no one hears it, does it make a sound? In Adventure Time's version, if Finn sees the world outside the hall, does the world outside the hall stop existing? The answer the episode gives is no. The world keeps going. Jake ages. The seasons change. The landscape shifts. Reality continues whether Finn perceives it or not. But Finn's relationship to reality is broken. He can exist in the world, or he can see the world, but he cannot do both. Seeing sends him back. Not seeing lets him move forward, but strips him of the ability to know where he is going. He is forced to choose between knowledge and progress, between understanding and action. And this is not just a philosophical exercise, it is a metaphor the show is building for Finn's emotional arc in Season 7. This is a Finn who has lost his arm, lost his relationship with Flame Princess, lost his father, lost his innocence about the nature of heroism. He is a boy who has seen too much, and the seeing has broken something in him. The Hall of Egress is the show telling you, in the language of dungeon crawling and fantasy adventure, that Finn's way of processing the world is no longer working. He needs to learn a new way of seeing. And the only way to learn it is to spend a long time not seeing at all. The blindfolded wandering is the most heartbreaking sequence in the episode. Finn walks through a world he cannot see. He bumps into things. He falls. He gets lost. Jake tries to help him, but Finn pushes Jake away because accepting help means engaging with the world, and engaging with the world means eventually opening his eyes, and opening his eyes means going back. Finn isolates himself to protect himself from the loop, and the isolation becomes its own kind of prison. He trades one trap for another. The hall traps him in a cycle of perception. The blindfold traps him in a cycle of avoidance. The escape, when it comes, is quiet. Finn walks into the duplicate dungeon. He encounters the door, and this time his eyes closed approach does not work. Something has changed. He has changed. The months or years of wandering have altered him in ways the hall did not anticipate. He is no longer the Finn who entered the hall. He is a different shape, a different frequency. And the hall, designed to trap the original shape, the original frequency, does not recognize him. He opens his eyes, and the loop does not fire. He walks through the door and sees for the first time the path that was always there, but invisible. The paradox resolves through transformation, not through logic. You cannot think your way out of the Hall of Egress. You cannot strategize. You cannot plan. You can only become someone else, slowly, painfully, over a long period of wandering in the dark. And the show treats this not as a failure, but as a success. Finn does not defeat the hall. He outgrows it. He proves that identity is not fixed, that the self is not a constant, that the person you are today is not the person you will be tomorrow, and that sometimes the only way forward is to become someone the trap was not designed to hold. This is the show at its most philosophically ambitious. An 11-minute episode about a boy in a dungeon that functions as a meditation on the nature of self, the relationship between perception and reality, and the possibility that personal growth is itself a form of paradox resolution. You are the same person who entered the hall, and you are not. Both are true, and the fact that both are true is what sets you free. There is a thread running through the Hall of Egress paradox that connects to something the show does consistently across its entire run: the use of dungeons as psychological spaces. In most fantasy fiction, a dungeon is a physical challenge. You fight monsters, you solve puzzles, you collect treasure. In Adventure Time, dungeons are internal. They are externalized versions of whatever the character entering them is struggling with. The dungeon train in Season 5 is about Finn's addiction to combat as avoidance. The dungeon in Rattleballs is about discipline and purpose, and the Hall of Egress is about the trap of trying to control your own perception. Finn enters the Hall of Egress at a point in his life when he has been hit with one revelation after another. His father abandoned him. The grass sword is cursed. His arm is gone. The heroic worldview he built his identity around has been cracking for 2 seasons. He's a boy who has been forced to see things he was not ready to see, and the Hall of Egress literalizes that experience. Opening your eyes sends you back. Seeing the truth resets you to before you knew it. The dungeon is his psychology, rendered as architecture, and the blindfold is his coping mechanism. If seeing the truth is painful, the natural response is to stop looking, to wrap layers of cloth around your head and stumble forward without engaging, to be present in the world without perceiving it. This is avoidance. This is denial. This is the psychological state of a person who has been hurt by reality and has decided that the solution is to stop participating in reality altogether. And the show depicts this as its own kind of prison. Finn is free of the loop, but he's not free. He's just trapped differently. He has traded one cage for another. The moment of escape is a moment of acceptance. Finn opens his eyes, and the loop does not fire, because he is no longer the person who was afraid of what he would see. He has been changed by the time he spent blind, by the discomfort and the vulnerability and the long, slow process of becoming someone who can handle the truth. The Hall does not recognize him, because he's no longer the person it was designed to trap. He has outgrown the trap, not through cleverness or strength, but through the simple, difficult, unglamorous process of enduring. This is the show's most mature statement about personal growth. It does not frame growth as an achievement. It does not frame it as a reward. It frames it as a slow accumulation of change, most of it painful, most of it unwanted, all of it necessary. You do not become a better person by solving a puzzle. You become a better person by living through things that hurt and coming out the other side different from who you went in. The paradox is that you cannot choose to change. You can only choose to keep going, and the change happens on its own, in its own time, at its own pace. And when it happens, the traps that used to hold you simply do not fit anymore. Finn walks out of the Hall of Egress and returns to the world. He does not celebrate. He does not talk about what happened. He simply moves forward, eyes open, seeing what is there. The paradox is resolved not with a bang, but with a quiet step. And that quiet step is one of the most profound moments in the entire series. The sixth paradox is the one the show spent 3 seasons building toward and then resolved in a single line of dialogue. It is the crossover paradox, and it is the direct consequence of the Farmworld wish from Paradox 1. But where the Farmworld paradox is about the multiverse, the crossover paradox is about identity. It asks a question the show had been circling since Season 4. If 2 versions of the same person exist in 2 different timelines, which one is real? Season 7, Episode 23, Crossover, aired on January 23, 2016. Finn and Jake travel to the Farmworld to confront the consequences of their wishes. By this point, Farmworld Finn has been wearing the Ice Crown for years. He has descended into the same madness that consumed Simon Petrikov. He calls everyone Gunter. He hoards ice. He has forgotten who he is. And Farmworld Jake, possessed by the Lick, is trying to use a portal to reach the Prime timeline and destroy all life there too. The Prime Finn has to fight Farmworld Finn. Think about what that means. He is fighting himself. Not a clone, not a copy, not a mirror image. A version of himself that would have been him if he had grown up in a world that never ended. Farmworld Finn is what Finn would have been without the apocalypse, without the adventures, without Jake. He is Finn, without the story. And the crown has turned him into something unrecognizable. There is a moment in the episode where Prime Finn looks at Farmworld Finn, and you can see the recognition. Not the recognition of a stranger who looks like him, the recognition of a life he almost lived. A version of himself that got the normal childhood, the family, the farm, the safety, and lost it all anyway, because the crown does not care what timeline you are in. The crown executes its program. Gunter's wish echoes everywhere. The paradox of the crossover is that both Finns are equally real. Neither one is the copy. Neither one is the original. They are both consequences of a wish, and the wish did not create one and preserve the other. It split a single possibility into two actualities and let both of them suffer in different ways. Prime Finn lost his family to the apocalypse. Farmworld Finn lost his mind to the crown. Same person, same soul, maybe, different wounds. And the show resolves this not with a grand revelation, but with a small, practical gesture. Prismo edits the Farmworld timeline. He places the crown back on Simon's skeleton as the bomb goes off, correcting a continuity error from Season 5 that fans had debated for years. The resolution is a patch, not a cure. The Farmworld still exists. Farmworld Finn is still trapped. The paradox is still alive. The show just stops looking at it for a while. The crossover episode does something else that is worth pausing on. It puts two Jakes in the same scene, Prime Jake and Farmworld Jake. And Farmworld Jake is possessed by the Lick. He is not Jake anymore. He is a vessel for extinction, wearing the body of a dog that Finn recognizes, that Finn loves. Prime Jake has to watch a version of his own body being used as a weapon against everything he cares about. This is the Finnsword paradox applied to Jake. If there are two versions of you, and one of them has been corrupted, does the corruption belong to you? Is Farmworld Jake suffering Jake's suffering? When Prime Jake looks at Farmworld Jake, is he looking at himself? The show suggests that he is. The show suggests that every version of you, no matter how altered, no matter how distant, carries something of the original. The corruption is not Jake's fault, but it is Jake's problem. It is his body, it is his face, it is his timeline that could have been. And this connects to a broader pattern in the show. Adventure Time constantly confronts its characters with versions of themselves they do not want to acknowledge. Finn meets Farmworld Finn and sees a life without heroism. Jake meets Farmworld Jake and sees a body without autonomy. Marceline meets the Vampire King and sees a version of her own hunger given form. Princess Bubblegum meets Lemongrab and sees a version of her own control given voice. The show is a hall of mirrors, and every mirror shows you the version of yourself you are most afraid of. The paradoxes are what make the mirrors work. Without the Farmworld, Finn never meets his alternate self. Without the Finnsword, Finn never confronts a consciousness that is him and not him. Without the reincarnation cycle, Finn never learns that his soul has been doing this for centuries, that the person he is right now is just the latest in a long line of drafts. The paradoxes are the mechanisms by which the show forces its characters to look at themselves from angles they would never have chosen. And the discomfort of that looking is where all the growth happens. There is also a quieter paradox embedded in the crossover episode that is easy to miss. When Prismo patches the Farmworld timeline, he corrects a specific detail. The Ice King's crown was visible on Simon's skull even after Farmworld Finn had already taken it. This was an animation error from Season 5, a continuity mistake, a glitch. And the show retroactively explained it as Prismo's intervention. The cosmic entity fixed a production error. The in-universe explanation for a real-world mistake is that a god reached into the timeline and adjusted it. This is metafictional, in a way that most shows would never attempt. Adventure Time is acknowledging that its own continuity is imperfect, that its own timeline contains errors, and rather than ignoring those errors or hoping the audience would not notice, it incorporated the error into the mythology. The mistake became a plot point. The glitch became a god's fingerprint. And the paradox of that, the paradox of a fictional universe acknowledging its own fictionality and incorporating it into its narrative, is itself a kind of paradox about the nature of stories. Are the mistakes in a story real? Do they matter? Do they need to be explained? Adventure Time says yes. Even the mistakes are real. Even the errors are part of the universe. Even the things that should not be there belong. Because in a show built on paradox, the things that should not be there are the most honest things of all. The seventh paradox is the cruelest one, and it happens in the series finale. Come along with me. The final episode of Adventure Time. Aired on September 3rd, 2018. It is the paradox of Betty Groff, and it is the paradox of wanting something so badly that getting it becomes impossible. Betty's story is a love story told in reverse. She starts in the past, in the time before the Mushroom War, engaged to Simon Petrikov. She watches Simon put on the crown. She watches him begin to change. And unlike everyone else in Simon's life, Betty does not leave. She does not give up. She spends the rest of the series trying to save him. She travels through time. She gains magical powers. She summons Golb, the entity of chaos, believing she can harness its power to cure Simon. She cannot. Golb is beyond control. Golb is the embodiment of entropy, of dissolution, of things falling apart. When Golb attacks Ooh in the finale, Betty finds herself inside the entity's stomach with Simon and Finn. Inside Golb, things are reduced to their essential forms. The crown, exposed to Golb's power, reverts to its original state. A wish-granting device, clean and unbound, no longer imprinted with Gunter's ancient desire. For the first time in 65 million years, the crown can grant a new wish. A real wish. The wish of whoever puts it on. Betty puts it on. She wishes to banish Golb, to destroy it, to protect Simon and save the world. And the wish fails. Not because the crown malfunctions, not because Betty is not powerful enough, but because the crown grants the truest wish of the wearer, and Betty's truest wish is not to destroy Golb. Betty's truest wish is to protect Simon. Everything she has done, every sacrifice, every spell, every desperate gamble has been driven by one desire: to keep Simon safe. The crown hears that wish and fulfills it in the most devastating way imaginable. Betty does not destroy Golb. Betty merges with Golb. She fuses with the entity of chaos, becoming a new version of it, one that has consciousness, purpose, direction. The new Golb, the Betty Golb, leaves the planet. Simon is safe. The world is saved. And Betty is gone. The paradox is this: Betty wanted to save Simon. To save Simon, she needed the crown. To use the crown, she needed to be inside Golb. To be inside Golb, she needed Golb to attack. To get Golb to attack, she needed to summon it. She summoned the very thing she needed to merge with. And she merged with it because her truest desire was the one thing she could not consciously choose. The wish worked perfectly. It just did not work the way she wanted it to. And Simon is left standing in the aftermath, cured, human, himself again for the first time in centuries. And the woman he loves is now a cosmic horror drifting through the void. He is free, and she is not. She saved him by losing herself. And the crown, the 65 million year old engine of Gunter's wish, finally stopped running its program. It granted a new wish. It just happened to be the worst possible version of the best possible outcome. There is a reading of Betty's sacrifice that is heroic. She gave everything to protect the man she loved. And there is a reading that is tragic beyond measure. She spent the entire series trying to get Simon back, and the moment she succeeded, she was the one who disappeared. The rescuer became the lost one. The seeker became the void. And Simon, finally awake, finally himself, has to live with the knowledge that he was saved by a love so powerful it consumed the person who carried it. The crossover paradox forces you to confront something the show has been hinting at for 3 seasons, that heroism itself might be a paradox. Finn is a hero. because his world needed one. The apocalypse created the conditions for his heroism. Without the Mushroom War, without the Lich, without the devastation that turned the Earth into ooh, Finn would have been a farm boy. He would have lived a quiet life. He would have been happy, maybe, in the way that people who never face existential threats are happy. Safe, unremarkable, unknown. Farmworld Finn is that version of the story. He is what Finn would have been without the tragedy. And the show makes a point of showing you that Farmworld Finn is not happier. He's not safer. He is just broken in a different way. Instead of losing his arm to a cosmic entity, he loses his mind to a magic crown. Instead of fighting the Lich, he becomes a vessel for the Lich's resurrection. The suffering finds him anyway. It just takes a different route. This is the paradox of heroism that Adventure Time keeps returning to. You cannot wish away the conditions that make heroes necessary without also wishing away the heroes themselves. And the heroes, paradoxically, are the ones most likely to try. Finn wished the Lich away because he is a hero. Because heroes want to fix things. Because heroes believe that removing the threat will remove the suffering. But the suffering is not caused by the threat. The suffering is caused by the conditions that create both the threat and the hero. Remove the threat, and you do not get peace. You get a different kind of suffering, wearing a different mask, following a different path to the same destination. Prime Finn and Farmworld Finn standing in the same frame is the show's most direct visual statement of this paradox. Two boys. Same face, same soul, possibly. One is a hero who lost his arm and his innocence, and his father. The other is a madman wearing an ice crown, calling everyone Gunter, lost in a 65-million-year-old dream. Neither one got to choose. Neither one had an option, the other did not. They are two outputs of the same equation with different variables, and both outputs equal loss. And when Prismo patches the Farmworld timeline, placing the crown back on Simon's skeleton, what he is really doing is accepting that some paradoxes cannot be resolved. They can only be managed. The Farmworld will continue to exist. Farmworld Finn will continue to suffer. The Lich will continue to find a way. And Prime Finn will continue to fight. Not because fighting solves anything, but because fighting is what heroes do, even when the fight is against the consequences of their own heroism. The Betty paradox extends backward through the entire series in ways that become visible only in retrospect. Betty's first appearance is in Season 5, Episode 48, an episode called Betty, which aired on February 24th, 2014. In that episode, Simon Petrikov briefly regains his sanity and uses the time travel device to contact Betty in the past, before the Mushroom War, before the crown changed him. Betty, seeing what has happened to the man she loves, jumps through the portal into the future. She arrives in a world she does not recognize, finds a man she barely recognizes, and immediately begins working to save him. From that moment forward, everything Betty does is in service of reversing the crown's effects. She studies magic. She gains power. She becomes increasingly desperate, increasingly reckless, increasingly willing to risk everything for a single outcome: Simon restored. And the show frames this as love. It is love, but it is also obsession. It is the same kind of consuming, identity-erasing need that the crown imprinted from Gunter. Betty wants Simon the way Gunter wanted Evergreen. Totally, desperately, at the expense of everything else. The parallel is not accidental. The show draws a deliberate line between Gunter's need for Evergreen and Betty's need for Simon. Both are forms of love. Both are forms of consumption. Both lead to self-destruction. Gunter's wish destroyed his identity, turning him into a template for the crown's programming. Betty's wish destroys her identity, fusing her with Golb and erasing everything she was except the desire to protect. The crown's paradox and Betty's paradox are the same paradox. expressed at different scales, a love so powerful, it erases the lover. And Simon, standing in the aftermath of both, is the common element. He is the person both loves were aimed at. He is the person both sacrifices were made for. And he survives both. He is the one who gets to keep his identity, his memories, his self. Everyone who loves Simon loses themselves in the process. Gunter becomes a program. Betty becomes a monster. Marceline loses a surrogate father. The crown takes and takes and takes. And Simon is the one left standing, not because he is strong, but because he is the center of a pattern that destroys everything at its edges. The finale frames Betty's sacrifice as a triumph. She saves Simon. She saves the world. She becomes something greater than herself. But there is another way to read it, a way the show deliberately leaves open. Betty did not choose to merge with Golb. She chose to protect Simon. The Crown translated that choice into a merger, because the Crown does not care about intentions. It cares about truths, and the truth underneath Betty's conscious desire to banish Golb was a deeper desire she could not override. Keep Simon safe, no matter what, at any cost. The Crown heard the deeper truth and acted on it, just as it heard Gunter's deeper truth 65 million years ago. Betty is the victim of her own sincerity. She wanted something too much, and the universe gave it to her in the most literal possible way. She wanted to protect Simon. She is now Golb. Golb is, in its new form, a protector. Simon is safe. The wish is fulfilled. And Betty is gone. The paradox is that getting exactly what you want is the worst possible outcome, when what you want is defined by need rather than by choice. The eighth paradox is the quietest one, and it happens in the space of 11 minutes. Season 5, Episode 49. Bad Timing, aired on March 3rd, 2014. It is a lumpy space princess episode, which means the show frames it as comedy. It is not comedy. It is one of the most disturbing things the show ever did, and the paradox at its center is the kind that makes you sit with it long after the episode ends. Here's what happens. Lumpy Space Princess reconnects with a man named Johnny at a tavern. They have history. There is warmth between them. There is the beginning of something real. And then, because LSP is LSP, she pushes too hard. She moves too fast. She overwhelms him. Johnny pulls away. The relationship collapses before it begins, and LSP is left heartbroken. Princess Bubblegum has been working on a time travel device. It is an orb that can revert molecules to a previously logged state. It is not a time machine in the traditional sense. It does not send people backward through time. It resets their physical state to an earlier configuration. But Bubblegum makes a crucial distinction. The device can only revert something that has been logged by the machine. If you use it on something that has never been logged, the molecules are not reverted. They are expelled from time entirely. LSP steals the device. She finds Johnny. She believes she can use the orb to send them both back to the moment they met, to get a second chance. She places the device on Johnny's head and activates it. And because Johnny was never logged by the machine, he does not travel back in time. He is erased. His molecules are expelled from the timeline. He ceases to exist in any point in history. He is not dead. He is not missing. He is simply gone, as if he had never been. And here is the part that makes this a paradox, and not just a tragedy. The show reveals where Johnny ends up. He is displaced to an earlier point in time, invisible, intangible, unable to interact with anything. He watches as LSP, the earlier version of LSP, the one who has not yet erased him, walks into Bubblegum's lab and asks to have her own memory erased so she will not remember him. He watches the woman who destroyed him choose to forget him. He is stuck in a moment he cannot change, watching the person who loved him decide that the love was not worth remembering. The paradox is causal, but it is also emotional. Elspie erased Johnny because she loved him too much. She wanted a second chance so badly that she destroyed the first one permanently. And then she erased her own memory of him, which means she cannot feel guilty about what she did because she does not know she did it. Johnny is trapped in a moment, watching someone who does not know he exists choose not to know he existed. There is no resolution. There is no rescue. The episode ends and the show moves on. Johnny is never mentioned again. Elspie does not remember him. The universe does not notice his absence. This is the show at its most casually horrifying. An 11-minute episode about a jealous purple cloud accidentally committing something worse than murder, framed as a breakup comedy, buried in the middle of season 5 between episodes about card games and ice cream. The paradox is that Johnny's erasure is both complete and witnessed. He is gone from every timeline, but he sees himself being gone. He exists only as a witness to his own non-existence. And the show does not linger on this. It does not treat it as a tragedy. It treats it as a Tuesday. What makes the bad timing paradox different from every other paradox in this list is scale. Every other paradox on this list has cosmic implications, wishes that reshape reality, crowns that last millions of years, cosmic entities that eat dimensions. Bad timing is about one person, one ordinary person, who was loved by a complicated person and was erased because that love could not regulate itself. Johnny did nothing wrong. He existed. He was available. He was kind to Elspie at a moment when she needed kindness, and the kindness was reciprocated with a form of devotion so intense it became destructive. Elspie did not erase Johnny out of malice. She erased him out of love. She wanted a second chance so badly that she reached for a tool she did not understand and used it on the person she was trying to save. The tool did what tools do. It followed its programming. And Johnny, who had never been logged by the time machine, was not reverted. He was ejected. There is a version of this story that is a fairy tale. A woman loves a man. The man pulls away. The woman finds a magic device that can turn back time and give them a fresh start. She uses it. They get their second chance. They live happily ever after. Adventure Time takes that fairy tale and shows you what happens when the magic device has fine print, when the reset button has terms and conditions. When love does not protect you from consequences, it accelerates them. The show compounds the horror by showing us what happens to Johnny after his erasure. He does not simply vanish. He is displaced to an earlier moment in time, stripped of physicality, reduced to a witness. He stands in Princess Bubblegum's lab, invisible, intangible, watching Elspie walk in and ask Bubblegum to erase her memories of him. He watches the woman who erased him choose to forget that she erased him. He watches the evidence of his existence being methodically removed, first his body, then his memory, then any trace that he was ever loved at all. This is not a cosmic paradox. This is a personal one, and it is, in its own way, the most frightening paradox in the entire show. Because the cosmic paradoxes, the farm world and the crown and gold, happen to characters with power, characters who can fight back, characters who exist in a universe that, however cruel, at least acknowledges their existence. Johnny has none of that. He is an ordinary person, caught in the gears of a machine that was not designed for him, operated by a person who did not understand it. And the result is a form of annihilation that is not even recognized as violence. The show does not follow up on Johnny. He does not appear in later episodes. He is not rescued. He is not remembered. He is a loose thread that the show deliberately leaves hanging. A small, quiet horror tucked into the middle of a long season, easy to miss, easy to forget. And that is the point. The show is telling you that some paradoxes are not grand, Some paradoxes are small and personal and devastating, and nobody notices. Some people are erased, and the universe does not care. The paradox continues. The person inside it does not. LSP, meanwhile, goes on with her life. She appears in dozens more episodes. She has other relationships. She causes other problems. She has no memory of Johnny and no memory of erasing him. She is, in a sense, the happiest person in this equation. She got what she wanted. The pain of the breakup is gone. The cost was someone else's entire existence, and she does not know the cost was paid. The paradox of bad timing is that the person who created it does not know it exists, and the person trapped inside it cannot tell anyone. And there is one more detail that makes this episode linger. The time machine LSP stole was built by Princess Bubblegum. Bubblegum, who is usually the most responsible and careful character in the series, built a device capable of erasing people from the timeline and left it accessible. She demonstrated it on small creatures. She knew what it could do. She warned LSP about the logging requirement. And she still left it, where LSP could steal it. The paradox is not just LSP's recklessness. It is Bubblegum's negligence. The smartest person in OO built a device capable of inflicting the worst possible thing on a person, and the worst possible thing happened because she did not lock the door. The ninth paradox spans the entire series and extends beyond it. It is the paradox of reincarnation, and it asks a question that the show takes hundreds of episodes to answer. If a soul is reborn into a new body, are the two lives the same life? Season 5, Episode 34. The Vault, aired on September 16th, 2013. Finn has been having nightmares, recurring images of a past life pressing through into his dreams. He goes to investigate and discovers that he has lived before. Many times. His soul has been recycled through the multiverse, wearing different bodies, living different lives, dying different deaths. And one of those lives was a woman named Shoko. Shoko lived in an earlier version of OO, long before Finn was born. She was a thief. She had one arm. She had a pet tiger. And she had a relationship with Princess Bubblegum. Not the same kind of relationship Finn has with Bubblegum, but a connection, a trust, a bond that Shoko ultimately betrayed. Shoko was hired to steal Bubblegum's amulet. She did it, and the guilt killed her, not metaphorically. She fell into a toxic river and died. Her body was buried beneath what would eventually become the treehouse. Finn's treehouse, the place where Finn lives in the present day, sitting on top of the bones of the woman he used to be. The paradox is this: Finn is Shoko's reincarnation. He carries her soul, but he does not carry her memories, not consciously. He lives in her grave. He has a relationship with the same person she betrayed. He has one fewer arm than he started with, just like she did. The patterns repeat. The soul carries something forward, not memory, not identity, but something. A tendency, a shape, an inclination. And it goes further. Shoko's tiger, the companion who stayed with her through everything, reincarnates too. The tiger becomes Jake. Finn and Jake's bond, the central relationship of the entire series, is not just a friendship. It is a continuation. They have been finding each other across lifetimes, across different bodies, across different versions of the world. The show confirms this in Together Again, the Distant Lands special that aired on May 20th, 2021. In that special, Finn and Jake both die of old age and navigate the afterlife together. At the end, they choose to be reincarnated at the same time, together, so they can find each other again. The final shot of the special shows two new characters, a girl and a small creature, walking together in a future version of OO. They are Finn and Jake. They do not know it. They will not remember. But they found each other again. The paradox of reincarnation in Adventure Time is that the soul remembers what the person forgets. Finn does not know he was Shoko. He does not know Jake was the tiger. He does not know that the patterns of his life are echoes of lives lived before. But the soul knows. The soul keeps finding the same people, the same connections, the same unfinished business. And the question the show asks is whether that makes the soul the real identity, and the person just a temporary container. If Finn's soul has been living and dying and finding Jake for centuries, then who is Finn? Is he the current container, with his specific memories and his specific fears? Or is he the pattern, the shape that keeps recurring, the love that keeps finding its way back? The show's answer, delivered in the final moments of Together Again, is both. Finn is the person and the pattern. He is the container and the thing contained. And the paradox is not a contradiction. It is a comfort. You lose everything, every time. Your memories, your name, your body, your world. But you do not lose the connection. The connection survives. The connection is the part of you that is real enough to outlast death. What the Vault does is take the concept of identity and stretch it across centuries. Finn is 14 years old. He has a specific personality, specific fears, specific relationships. He is brave and reckless and emotionally available in a way that most heroes in animated shows are not. And then the show tells him, and tells the audience, that none of this is new. He has been here before. He has been brave before, in a different body. He has been reckless before, in a different time. He has even had the same relationship before, with the same person, and the previous version of that relationship ended in betrayal and death. The implications are everywhere once you start looking. Finn is drawn to Princess Bubblegum in the early seasons. He has a crush on her. He admires her. He wants her approval. And the show reveals that this is not a new attraction. It is a continuation. Shoko was drawn to Bubblegum too. Centuries earlier, the soul remembers the connection even when the person does not. Finn's feelings for Bubblegum are not just a crush. They are an echo of a relationship that spans lifetimes, a gravitational pull between two people, or rather between one immortal person and one recycled soul, that neither of them can fully explain. And then there is the physical parallel. Shoko had one arm. Finn loses his arm in Season 6. The show makes this connection deliberately. The soul carries something forward, and one of the things it carries is the body's blueprint. Not exactly, not completely, but enough to suggest a pattern. Finn is not repeating Shoko's life event by event, but he is rhyming with it. The same shapes, the same losses, the same connections, rendered in a new body with no memory of the originals. The Together Again special takes the reincarnation paradox and pushes it to its logical and emotional endpoint. Finn and Jake die. Not tragically, not violently. They die of old age, in a future version of Ooo that the audience barely gets to see. And they enter the afterlife, which in Adventure Time is a layered system of dead worlds, each one more peaceful than the last. Jake, whose spiritual practice during his life was apparently excellent, ascends to the 50th dead world. Nirvana. Complete peace, complete stillness. An end to wanting, to striving, to the cycle of living and dying. Finn, whose spiritual practice was apparently less excellent, lands in the 37th dead world. He is not at peace. He is restless. He misses Jake. He wants to find his friend. And the wanting is exactly what keeps him from reaching the 50th level. The entry requirement for Nirvana is the absence of desire. And Finn desires nothing more than to be with Jake again. The paradox is pure. The only way to reach Jake is to stop wanting to reach Jake. But he cannot stop wanting to reach Jake, because reaching Jake is the thing he wants most. It is the Hall of Egress paradox, repeated in the afterlife, expressed through love instead of perception. And then, the Lich appears. Even in death, even in the afterlife, the Lich finds a way. He has been manipulating New Death, the current administrator of the Dead Worlds, and he has broken the reincarnation cycle. Souls are no longer being recycled. The dead are no longer being reborn. The process that has been sustaining the Adventure Time universe for millennia, the process that carried Finn's soul from Shoko to his current body, has been halted. Finn and Jake have to fight the Leech one more time. They have to save death itself. And they do. Because that is what they do. Because they are heroes even when they are dead. They defeat the Lich's plan, restore the reincarnation cycle, and stand at the threshold of their next lives. And here is where the paradox finds its resolution, or at least its most hopeful expression. Jake has earned nirvana. He has earned the right to stop, to rest, to end the cycle, and he chooses not to take it. He chooses Finn. He chooses to be reborn, to start over, to go back into the cycle of living and dying and losing and finding, because doing it with Finn is better than doing nothing without him. Nirvana is perfect peace. Jake chooses imperfect love. The final image of Together Again is two small figures walking together through a landscape, a girl and a small creature. They are Finn and Jake reincarnated, wearing new bodies, carrying no memories of who they were. They do not know each other's names. They do not know their history. They do not know that they have been doing this for centuries, finding each other, adventuring together, dying, being reborn, finding each other again. They just know that they are together, and that being together feels right, and that the road ahead is long and unknown, and somehow not frightening at all. The reincarnation paradox is the show's final word on the question of identity. Who are you? You are the things you lose, and the things you keep. You are the memories you carry, and the ones that dissolve. You are the person you are right now, and the person you were 1,000 years ago, and the person you will be 1,000 years from now. You are all of them, and none of them. The paradox is that you are both temporary and eternal, both fragile and indestructible, both a single moment and an unbroken line stretching back through every life you have ever lived. And the show's answer to this paradox is not a resolution, it is a feeling. The feeling of walking next to someone you recognize, not with your mind, but with something deeper. Something that has been recognizing them since before you were born. That is what Adventure Time means by reincarnation. Not the preservation of identity, not the continuation of memory, but the persistence of love across every boundary the universe can construct. Time, death, forgetting, bodies that crumble, and names that are lost. Through all of it, the connection survives. Through all of it, you find each other. And there is something else about Together Again that pulls the reincarnation paradox into focus. The special reveals that life, the entity responsible for reincarnation, creates new bodies from clay. The souls enter an underwater garden. They shed their memories, their attachments, their identities, and life molds new vessels for them, new bodies in new forms, and sends them back into the world to do it all again. This is reincarnation as art. Life is a sculptor. Each body is a new piece, shaped from the same clay, carrying the same essential spark, but rendered differently each time. Finn was a comet. Then he was a butterfly. Then he was Shoko. Then he was Finn. Each iteration is complete in itself, a full life with full experiences, and each iteration is also a draft, a version, a step in an ongoing process of refinement that has no clear endpoint. The paradox of reincarnation in Adventure Time is that each life is both final and preliminary. Each life matters completely, with all its joys and losses and relationships. And each life is also a chapter, one installment in a series that stretches backward and forward beyond any individual's ability to comprehend. You are living the most important life you will ever live, and you are also living one of many, and both of these things are true simultaneously, and neither one diminishes the other. This is what the Lich threatens to destroy in Together Again. By breaking the reincarnation cycle, the Lich is not just ending individual lives, he is ending the process itself. The River of Souls stops flowing, the clay stops being shaped, the garden dries up. No more iterations, no more drafts, no more chances to find the person you have been finding for millennia. The Lich does not want to kill Finn. The Lich wants to kill the possibility of Finn. Every future Finn, every future Jake, every future version of the connection that has been sustaining itself across lifetimes. And Finn and Jake stop him. They stop him because that is what they do. Because heroes fight entropy. Because love fights extinction. Because the connection between two people who keep finding each other is stronger than the force that wants all things to end. But they also stop him because the show needs them to stop him. Because the show is making an argument, and the argument requires a specific ending. The argument is that love is the thing that survives, that connection is the thing that outlasts death, and that the paradox of reincarnation, the paradox of being both temporary and eternal, is not a problem to be solved, but a gift to be accepted. Jake choosing Finn over Nirvana is the emotional thesis of the entire series compressed into a single decision. He has earned peace. He has earned the right to stop. And he looks at peace. And he looks at Finn. And he chooses Finn. He chooses the mess. He chooses the uncertainty. He chooses to go back into the river, to be shaped again, to forget again, to lose again. Because losing with Finn is better than perfection without him. That is not a logical choice. It is a paradoxical one. It is choosing suffering over peace. Because the suffering comes with love and the peace comes alone. And the show says yes, that is the right choice. That is the only choice. That is what it means to be a person in a universe that offers you both options and asks you to pick. The 10th and final paradox is the one that was hidden in plain sight for a decade. It is the paradox of Fiona and Cake, and it is the one that ties every other paradox in this video together. For most of the original series, Fiona and Cake appeared to be fictional characters within the show, gender-swapped versions of Finn and Jake, created by the Ice King for his fanfiction. They appeared in 3 episodes, all framed as stories the Ice King was writing. They were jokes. They were meta commentary. They were a fun way for the show to play with its own conventions. And then, in 2023, the spin-off series Adventure Time, Fiona and Cake revealed that Fiona and Cake were not fictional at all. They were real. They lived in a real universe. And that universe was created by Prismo. Here is the paradox. Prismo, the wish-granting entity who lives in the time room, the same entity involved in the Farmworld paradox and the Finsword paradox, created a universe for himself. Not as a wish for someone else, for himself. He wanted to see what would happen if the Adventure Time universe had different variables, different genders, different dynamics. A universe where Finn was a girl named Fiona, and Jake was a cat named Cake. He hid this universe inside the mind of the Ice King, because the Ice King's crown-addled brain was the perfect hiding place. A mind so chaotic that nobody would notice an extra universe tucked into its folds. But then, Simon was cured. The Ice King became Simon Petrikov again in the series finale, and when the Ice King's mind cleared, Fianna's universe lost its anchor. The magic that sustained it drained away. Fianna and Cake woke up in a version of their world where they were ordinary. No magic, no adventures, no memory of what they had been. Fianna was a young woman working a dead-end job in a city. Cake was a regular cat. The universe was still there, but it was diminished, stripped of everything that made it what it was. The paradox is existential. Fianna and Cake are real beings who exist because a cosmic entity decided to create them as a private experiment. Their entire reality, their entire lives, their relationships and memories and identities exist at the pleasure of someone else. And they do not know this. They do not know that they are creations rather than creatures. They do not know that their world was built by Prismo and hidden in a madman's mind and destabilized by a cure that had nothing to do with them. And then the Scarab arrives. The Scarab is a cosmic auditor, a bureaucrat of the divine, whose job is to ensure that cosmic entities follow the rules. Creating a universe for personal amusement is against the rules. The Scarab declares Fianna and Cake's entire existence a violation. Not just their actions, not just their choices, but their existence. They are illegal beings in an unauthorized universe, and the Scarab's solution is simple. Delete them. Delete their world. Delete every trace of them from the multiverse. Think about what that means from Fianna's perspective. You wake up one day and discover that your entire reality, everything you know, everyone you love, the sky above you and the ground beneath you, was created by someone you have never met for reasons you will never understand. And now someone else you have never met has decided that your existence is unauthorized and must be terminated. You are not in danger. You are not under threat. You are a clerical error being corrected. The paradox of Fianna and Cake is the paradox of contingent existence. They are real, but their reality is dependent on factors entirely outside their control. Their existence is a side effect of a cosmic entity's curiosity and a madman's mental illness. If Prismo had not been bored, they would not exist. If Simon had not been cured, they would not have lost their magic. If the Scarab had not been thorough, they would not have been marked for deletion. Every link in the chain of their existence is someone else's decision, and the resolution is itself a paradox. Simon, the man whose cured mind destabilized Fianna's universe, travels with Fianna and Cake across multiple realities to find a way to save them. In the end, he removes their universe from his mind. He extracts it, makes it independent, gives it its own foundation, and by doing so, he makes it an official universe, a real reality, a place that exists not because someone hid it in a dream, but because someone chose to let it stand on its own. The Scarab's boss calls off the deletion. Fianna and Cake are real now. Officially, cosmically, bureaucratically real. Their universe is connected to the rest of the multiverse. They have a right to exist. Not because they were always real, but because someone fought for them to be. The Fianna and Cake paradox gains another dimension when you consider the role of authorship. For most of the original series, the audience believed that Fianna and Cake were fictional characters created by the Ice King. The Ice King wrote fan fiction about them. He read the stories aloud. He treated them as his creations, his characters, his imagined friends. And the show encouraged this reading. The Fianna and Cake episodes were framed as stories within a story, metafictional exercises that played with the show's own conventions without affecting its continuity. But the spin-off reveals that the Ice King was not creating Fianna and Cake. He was channeling them. The universe Prismo hid inside the Ice King's mind was leaking into Ice King's consciousness, feeding him images and stories that he interpreted as his own imagination. He thought he was writing fan fiction. He was actually transcribing signals from a real universe he did not know he was hosting. The author was not the author. The fiction was not fiction. And the creative act, the act of imagining characters and telling stories about them, was actually an act of observation, of receiving transmissions from a reality hidden inside his own fractured mind. This raises a question the show is clearly aware of. Is all fiction a form of observation? When a writer creates a character, are they inventing someone or discovering them? Adventure Time, through the Fiona and Cake paradox, suggests the latter, or at least it refuses to rule it out. The Ice King wrote stories about Fiona and Cake because Fiona and Cake were real, even though he did not know they were real, even though no one in the audience knew they were real. The stories were true. The fiction was documentary. The imagination was perception. And when Simon was cured, when the Ice King's mind cleared and the crown's influence faded, the channel closed. Prismo's hidden universe lost its host. The magic drained away. Fiona woke up in a world without wonder, working a job she did not understand, sharing an apartment with a cat she used to ride into battle. The cure that saved Simon destroyed Fiona's world. Not deliberately, not maliciously, just as a side effect. A collateral consequence of a man getting his mind back. Fiona's journey through the spin-off is a journey of self-determination in the face of external contingency. She did not ask to be created. She did not ask to be hidden in a madman's mind. She did not ask for her world to be drained of magic when that madman was cured. Everything about her existence has been determined by someone else's decisions. And yet, she fights. She travels across dimensions with Simon and Cake. She confronts the Scarab. She demands the right to exist. She argues implicitly and sometimes explicitly that the circumstances of her creation do not define the validity of her experience. She is real because she lives, not because someone authorized her to. The resolution of the Fiona and Cake paradox is an act of liberation. Simon extracts Fiona's universe from his mind and makes it independent. It stands on its own. It is no longer a hidden experiment or an unauthorized creation or a signal being received by a broken antenna. It is a universe. Official. Recognized. Connected to the rest of the multiverse through channels that were not there before. And the Scarab, the cosmic bureaucrat who declared Fiona's existence a violation, is overruled. Not by force. Not by argument. But by the simple fact that Fiona's universe now exists independently, and the rules the Scarab was enforcing no longer apply. The paradox of Fiona and Cake is the paradox of contingent existence resolved through deliberate choice. You did not choose to exist. The conditions of your existence were determined by forces you cannot control and people you have never met. But you can choose to continue existing. You can choose to fight for the validity of your experience. You can choose to be real. Not because someone authorized you, but because you decided you are. And when you make that choice, when you stand in the face of cosmic bureaucracy and say, I am here and I matter and you do not get to delete me, the universe has to accommodate you. The universe has to make room. That is the argument Adventure Time makes with its paradoxes. The universe is not fair. The timeline is not clean. The rules are not consistent. But inside the mess, inside the contradictions and the loops, and the irreconcilable facts, there are things that persist. Love persists. Connection persists. The stubborn insistence on being real persists. And the paradoxes, for all their cruelty, for all the suffering they cause, are the cracks through which that persistence enters. The paradox is not the obstacle. The paradox is the door. There is a way to read the Betty Golub paradox that maps onto every other paradox in this video, and it goes like this. Every paradox in Adventure Time is generated by love, not by malice, not by accident, by love. Gunter loved Evergreen. The love became a wish. The wish became the crown. The crown destroyed Simon. Betty loved Simon. The love became a quest. The quest became a sacrifice. The sacrifice destroyed Betty. Finn loved Jake. The love became a wish to undo the lick. The wish became the farm world. The farm world created a new lick. Elspie loved Johnny. The love became desperation. The desperation became an erasure. Finn loved the Pillow World family. The love was erased by Golub. The soul loves finding its counterpart. The love becomes reincarnation. The reincarnation becomes forgetting. Every single paradox on this list begins with someone caring about someone else and making a choice based on that care. The paradoxes are not failures of logic. They are failures of love. Or rather, they are the shapes that love takes. When it collides with a universe that runs on rules love does not recognize. Love does not recognize time. Love does not recognize dimensionality. Love does not recognize the difference between a wish and a consequence. Love says protect him, and the crown says by becoming a cosmic horror. And love does not have a mechanism for objecting. Love says save him, and the wish says by creating a second timeline. And love does not have a mechanism for refusing. Love operates at a scale and an intensity that the universe's machinery cannot accommodate without breaking. And the breaks are the paradoxes, and the paradoxes are the show. This is Adventure Time's deepest thesis, the one buried under the candy colors and the funny voices and the radical formal experiments. Love is the force that generates paradoxes. Not evil, not chaos, not entropy. Love. Because love demands things the universe cannot deliver. Love demands permanence in a universe governed by change. Love demands presence in a universe governed by time. Love demands that the people you care about be safe and whole and remembered in a universe that offers none of those guarantees. And when love's demands collide with the universe's limitations, the collision creates a paradox, a place where two irreconcilable truths exist simultaneously, where the wish and the consequence occupy the same space, where the thing you wanted and the thing you got are both true and both impossible. Betty wanted Simon. She got Golub. Both are true. Finn wanted a world without the Lich. He got two worlds, one with the Lich and one that generates a new one. Both are true. Jake wanted Nirvana. He wanted Finn. He chose Finn. Both desires are true. The reincarnated soul remembers the connection but forgets the person. Both states are true. The show does not resolve these contradictions because love does not resolve contradictions. Love holds them. Love carries them. Love says both things are true, and I will live in the space between them. And the space between them is where all the meaning is. If you have made it this far, if you have heard all 10 paradoxes, and you are still here, then you already understand this. You understand that the paradoxes are not puzzles to be solved. They are rooms to be inhabited. They are the spaces where the show puts its heaviest truths, the truths that do not fit neatly into 11-minute episodes or season-long arcs, the truths that require the accumulation of hundreds of episodes and the patience of an audience willing to sit with contradiction. Adventure Time is not a show about a boy and his dog. It is a show about what happens when love meets time. And what happens is paradox. Every time. Without exception. The love creates the wish. The wish creates the paradox. The paradox creates the suffering. And the suffering, eventually, if you are lucky, if you are patient, if you are willing to wander blind through a world you cannot see, creates something new, something that was not there before, something that could not have existed without the breaking. A tree where a person used to be, a universe where a fiction used to be, a connection that outlasts every body it inhabits, a door that opens for a person the trap was not designed to hold. That is what the paradoxes build toward. Not resolution, not clarity, not the clean, satisfying click of a puzzle piece snapping into place, just the ongoing, impossible, beautiful act of holding two truths at once and refusing to let go of either one. That is what the show means. That is what it has always meant. And now, maybe, you hear it a little differently than you did when you pressed play. And that is the final paradox of Adventure Time. The show asks, over and over, across 10 seasons and 4 specials and 1 spin-off series, a single question. What makes something real? Is it origin? Is it permanence? Is it the ability to be verified, measured, timestamped, logged? Or is it something else? Is it the fact that someone experienced it? Is it the fact that someone cared about it? Is it the fact that someone fought for it to continue? Finn lived a life in the Pillow World and forgot it. Was it real? Farm World Finn lives in a timeline that was supposed to be erased and keeps existing anyway. Is he real? The Finn sword contains a consciousness created by a time loop. Is he real? Johnny was expelled from the timeline and watches himself being forgotten. Was he real? Fiona and Cake were created as an experiment and declared illegal. Are they real? The show's answer, delivered across thousands of minutes of animation, is the same every time. Yes, they are real. Not because of how they were made, not because of what they can prove, but because they experienced something, because they loved someone, because they were there, even if being there was a paradox, even if their presence contradicted the rules, even if the universe itself could not decide whether they belonged. That is what Adventure Time did with its paradoxes. It did not solve them. It did not explain them away. It did not build a clean, consistent timeline where everything fits together neatly. It let the contradictions stand. It let the impossible things be true. It let a dinosaur's wish last 65 million years, and let a boy live a whole life inside a pillow, and let a woman become a cosmic horror to save the man she loved, and let 2 versions of the same person exist in 2 different dimensions, both of them suffering, both of them real. And if you are still here, if you have stayed through all 10 paradoxes, then you know something about this show that you did not know when you pressed play. You know that Adventure Time is not a show about adventure. It is a show about the impossibility of clean endings, about the way time folds and breaks and heals and scars, about the way love creates paradoxes that the universe has to accommodate, because the alternative is admitting that love does not make sense, and the universe, for all its cruelty, is not willing to go that far. The crown is still out there. Prismo is still dreaming. The farm world is still spinning. Somewhere in the multiverse, a pillow woman is still mourning a husband she will never see again. And somewhere else, a boy and his dog are walking through a world they do not recognize, carrying souls that have done this before, souls that will do this again, souls that keep finding each other across the wreckage of timelines that should not exist but do. If this is the kind of content you come back to, subscribing means more than you know. Thank you for staying. Sleep well. I will see you in the next one.